Is the fall of the Assad regime the latest sign of Russia's declining global influence? And is the retreat of Russian troops from Syria a small crack in Putin's global strategy? Or does it foreshadow more serious concerns for the Russian Federation? Joining me tonight to discuss these questions is ILYA Ponomarev, an exiled Russian opposition leader. Good evening, sir. Good to have you. Thank you for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. Hello.
So let's start with explaining what Russia's interests in Syria were, and while the fall of Assad is so unfortunate for Vladimir Putin. So since the 70s, I understand, Russia's foothold in the Mediterranean has been bound with this Assad dynasty. Now, as it happens, Russia's enduring military presence in Syria is going to be either more expensive or shorter or less effective and intensive. So how, in your mind, could that affect Russia's policy in the region?
Well, obviously, Syria was a stronghold for Kremlin for many, many years, as you correctly said, and the relationship with Assad have long-lasting history. That's why Russia decided to intervene, and Syria actually was more than that for Vladimir Putin. Syria was a symbol that he's returning to the role of a global player. Now, that was the idea that was proposed to him by Iranian security chief Soleimani in the private conversation, and Putin immediately grabbed that idea that would propel Russia back to the place which belonged to the Soviet Union once, that he would solve the fates of different peoples in different countries. And that was the start of the private military company Wagner that was created for operations in Syria, and then which expanded beyond Middle East to Africa and to other regions of the planet.
All right, so now, if you allow me, I would like to shift that our interest to Ukraine, because everyone is worrying that Russia's withdrawing from Syria frees up additional troops that could be redeployed to Ukraine. So how will that affect the war in Ukraine, according to you?
Frankly speaking, I think that the effect on the war on Ukraine would be minimal. Because the troops that were ready to fight, they were long time withdrawn from Syria. And actually, that was one of the main reasons why Russia just could not defend Assad there. And that was one of the reasons why the armed opposition decided that the moment has come and started their advancing, because they knew that Russia is no longer an assistance and Iran is no more an assistance to Assad, and that was the main trigger. The only threat that could have been real is the naval fleet that was based in Tartus. But Turkey already said that they are not letting them through the Bosphorus Strait into the Black Sea, and that's why it's not a threat either.
All right. So it's not just Syria, right? We see Russia beginning to have problems in different places in Europe. First Georgia, then Moldova, Romania as well, and big protests over Russian interference there in the electoral process. So globally, Russia's having more and more troubles, it seems, right? And all this happening in the very same time.
Yeah, I think that it's more a coincidence. The empire has outstretched itself. They don't have just enough resources, and obviously it's a domino effect when different pieces start to collapse all at once. But that's obviously an evidence that the resources are not enough. Now, a lot depends on what would happen in Ukraine for the stability in Russia. Actually, this ceasefire agreement that so many people are talking about could be the rescue for Vladimir Putin. It can be his way out, because it would remove the major burden that his political and economic system currently has at the moment. Whether that will happen or not, we will see, but I think that Putin is definitely willing to negotiate.
Well, Lavrov doesn't seem to. He says that there's not going to be any talks so far.
I think that the proper negotiator would never disclose his cards, and obviously Putin would do everything possible that Trump and Zelensky should be at their knees begging for the negotiations. But I think that's what he wants the most.
All right. How about internal domestic problems and economic problems for Vladimir Putin? We see 28% of inflation. We have seen the ruble, which lost 10% in just one day last week. So could that escalate into some more disaffection vis-à-vis Putin and the Kremlin?
The devaluation of ruble is rather the indicator than the problem itself, because devaluation of ruble allows Putin to have more rubles to spend for his military machine and for the payments that he is doing for his military men and for the industries. But obviously, it's a sign of a deep and severe problem. And this problem is that too much is being spent on the military. Too much is dependent on this, and Russia is in a serious international isolation. Now, a lot of things are in our hands, whether we would be consistent and coherent in terms of sanctions policies, whether we would increase pressure, whether the sanctions regime would finally become smart sanctions instead of just brute foreseen sanctions, because we need the cracks to enlarge rather than the matter to solidify.
ILYA Ponomarev, thank you very much for your insights. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon.